Hi there, Heather Steves here, and today I want to share with you a fun process video that I did based on that sketch that you just saw there. I pulled out some papers from my stash, including this pattern paper from Central Park. The green is from a Fundamentals kit a while ago, and then I have a couple of different cardstocks that I'm using. So I'm just starting by cutting some strips in my papers so that I can start to figure out the sizes of the rest of the papers on the layout. So to help me figure out the size of the mat that's going to go under these photos, I've pulled out my Versamat. I'm just lining up my photos with the grid there and trying to figure out what kind of spacing I want. So you see I've just slid them down, so I'm going to put 1/4 of an inch on the bottom and the top. I think it might even be 3/8. And that helped me to figure out what height I wanted this mat to be cut at. And now I'm just laying the photos on it, and then I'm using the grid on my photo mat to figure out how wide to make it. And that's how I determined what size I wanted that to be. And then based on that, I'm able to cut my piece for the other side of the paper by just making sure that I keep the same dimensions around the photo. So the sketch that I'm working with here has a lot of horizontal lines on it. So I'm just going to do a little dry fit here, and then I'm going to try and figure out what else I want to add to this layout to help to mimic those vertical lines. So I'm just getting my papers all lined up here, and I'm going to put my photos on there, and then I can start to figure out what to do next. So you notice I had a little scrap of this red pattern paper tucked in there. I decided that I did like it, so now I've gone ahead and I've cut the strips that I need for the layout. So instead of adding more papers to this layout, I decided that I was going to do some stenciling. So I've just pulled out my all-purpose mat so I can use that underneath. And then I've got this Close to My Heart stencil with all these little borders on it. So it is a retired stencil, but I haven't used it very much. So it's great that I'm going to get some use out of it. So I'm just using some painter's tape and I'm attaching that down to my paper. But I'm not quite really sure what exactly I'm going to do. So I want to do a little bit of testing. So I'm pulling out my Distress Oxide inks. So I ended up pulling out Mustard Seed, Vintage Photo, and Mowed Lawn. And then I'm going to do a little bit of testing on some scrap paper. So I'm going to start with the Vintage Photo, and I'm just going to put a little piece on here just using one of the other stencils there. And then I decided that I would like to try the Mustard Seed and see if it will blend into the Vintage Photo. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just relining it up into another spot, testing that out. And then I thought I better check out this the Mowed Lawn, the green, because I think it's very similar to the paper that I have on there. So I did all three of those, and then I'm just comparing them to my layout. I didn't actually like the green with it, so I ended up settling on the Vintage Photo and the Mustard Seed. So I'm just cleaning up my hands here because I'm really good at getting fingerprints on things. So I'm just making sure that everything's nice and clean, and then that it's also dry, because I've made that mistake many times. I've set a wet stamp or wet something on a layout and it makes a bit of a mess. So anyway, back to my stenciling. I'm just starting with the Mustard Seed, and I'm going kind of to the middle of my page because I'm going to do a bit of blending, but I want to make sure that I keep it fairly even. So now I'm taking the Vintage Photo and I'm putting that up to meet the Mustard Seed, and then I have to pull off my stencil so that I can finish that, because I want it to go, of course, right across the entire page. So again, I'm just cleaning everything, making sure that it's clean, but also very dry, because if I set that down, it will either smudge the ink or it'll make a mark on my paper. So I ended up finishing that up, and then I wanted to see if it looked good with everything, and I was quite happy with it actually. So then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the other half of the layout, and I will just jump ahead to that part. So now that I've got both of those stencil borders done, I've done my dry fit, and I still want something on the bottom of my layout. So I'm going to go ahead and add another stencil, but the thinner one that I did with the little test that I did earlier. So I'll just jump ahead because you don't need to watch me doing the exact same process again. So now that my borders are all done, I've gone ahead and attached all of my paper. So I matted my smaller photos with some green cardstock, and I used some foam tape there, which was what I was trying to show you. I cut out my title with Cricut, and that little hunting word I actually cut out 3 times, and then I attached it all together to give it some thickness. I also cut some shapes with some scrap paper just so I can kind of test fit them before I go ahead and cut them out on my Cricut. That just helps me to figure out if it's going to work the way that I want it to. So now I'm just adding some foam tape to my title, and I am going to get my grid ruler out so that I can align that nicely and make sure that it's nice and straight. So it really helps having that grid ruler. I can line it up with the bottom of the page there. And then I'm also going to put some foam tape on the top word there, that hunting. Even though I've made it thicker because of the 3 layers, I still think that it would look better if I pop it up. So I'm going to attach all of those little dots, and now I can attach it to my layout. I like it that it overlaps a little bit with the other word. And then I have these recollection stickers that I've had in my stash for a long time. They're clear, but the letters themselves are gold. And they're just really fiddly though to try and fit them into this space. So you see that I'm kind of really struggling with that. And then I actually end up ripping them up, and the one letter rips up some of the paper because I didn't like, they weren't sitting quite where I wanted them. So rip them up, and then I'm going to put them back down there where I actually am happy with their placement. And you don't even notice that the paper ripped a bit because it's white and the stickers are clear. So I just used a clean sticker on top of that and threw away the one that ripped the paper. So now I'm just attaching the little spyglass to finish off my little title cluster there. So I got these really cool metallic tapes from this craft grab bag thing that I bought in an auction. They have a ton of colors, and I thought that it would be fun to try them out on this layout. So I ended up choosing like a rose gold color, and I'm just putting it in between all of my papers. So it actually looks really cool, and it actually creates a bit of a definition between the papers and almost makes it look like I've matted my papers before putting them down. You see as I flip it over there, I'm just putting some Scotch tape on the back side because the adhesive isn't overly strong, and I don't want it to come off when I'm sliding it into my page protector. The other ends are kind of tucked underneath my cardstock, so that will hopefully hold it all in place. And it's a little bit fiddly, so you see I keep getting my head in the shot there just so that I can make sure that I get it nice and straight and lined up properly. And I'm doing that on all of the papers and on both sides of my layout. So now that I have all those pieces attached, I'm just going to show you a little trick that I do when I'm creating delicate Cricut designs. So I've kept the negative space from this little flag here, and you see I'm just putting some wet adhesive in there. I'm using that negative space as my template. So I'm adding the glue, and then I'm sticking in the little piece that's supposed to go in there, and that lined it up nicely. But you see I pull off my template every time, because if the glue oozes out from underneath the little piece, then my template will actually get stuck to the paper. So I learned that the hard way. So every time I stick a piece down, I make sure that I pull that up almost right away so that it doesn't adhere to the base. And then I was just cutting out that little nose piece there because it didn't cut too cleanly with my Cricut. And again, I'm lining it up and I'm using that as my template. And I just put a little bit too much glue on there, so I just dabbed it off on some scrap paper there, and now that little embellishment is finished. And there's another one that I did, and now I can attach them down onto my layout. And of course I'm using some foam tape, and you see that I didn't even worry about putting any adhesive on the pole for the flag, and then I'm just putting some foam tape on the top of the little map there, and then that gives me some dimension on that side. Next out, I pulled out some Gina Marie glitter dots. They blend in really well with some of the gold colors that I have on my layout, so I'm just sprinkling those around my layout to kind of add a finishing touch. So lastly, I pulled out these little phrase stickers that I had in my stash. They're all different colors, so I want to make sure that I have some sayings that are suitable to the subject of my layout, but also that are the right color. So these stickers are really quite thin, so I'm not going to bother worrying about popping them up on my layout. I'm just going to go ahead and put them directly down onto my layout, and I think they will just be fine there as I have lots of dimension in other areas. So that is it for this layout. I certainly hope that you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and have a fantastic day.